The night was unusually silent as Sarah approached the old, crumbling hotel. Its windows were shattered, and a cold wind whispered through the broken doors. The sign above swayed with a creaking sound. "Welcome if you dare." As she stepped inside, the floorboards groaned under her feet. Shadows danced along the walls as the flickering lights above barely illuminated the long hallway. The air smelled of decay and something rotten. Suddenly she heard a faint whisper from the end of the corridor. "Get out!" She froze. The sound came again, this time closer. Her heart pounded as she saw a dark figure vanish around the corner. In the lobby, old furniture was overturned, and the reception desk was covered in dust. On the wall, old photographs showed guests smiling, but their eyes were scratched out, leaving dark, empty holes. A loud bang echoed upstairs. Against every instinct, she climbed the staircase. Each step made her blood run cold. On the top floor, doors opened and closed on their own. From behind one, she heard a woman crying, "Don't leave me here." Before she could react, the lights went out and a cold hand grabbed her shoulder. She screamed as the hotel seemed to breathe around her, trapping her in a nightmare with no exit after escaping the hotel. Sarah ran to her car, parked on a lonely road. The headlights barely cut through the dense fog that rolled in like a living creature. Every mile she drove, the road seemed endless, twisting unnaturally. She glanced in the rearview mirror. A shadowy figure was standing in the middle of the road, waving, but it had no face. Panicked, she swerved, only to see the figure vanish and then reappear closer with every blink. The engine sputtered. The radio crackled and a distorted voice whispered, "You can't escape." Trees on both sides seemed to lean toward her car, their branches scratching against the windows like claws. Her hands shook as the tires hit something soft. She looked outside and saw a trail of blood leading into the darkness. Something was moving in the shadows, just beyond the reach of the headlights. Suddenly, the fog thickened, swallowing the road. She couldn't see the car's hood. The sound of footsteps surrounded the vehicle, coming from every direction. She realized she was not alone, and the road would not let her leave. The night was darker than usual when Sarah stumbled upon an old, decrepit house at the edge of town. The wooden fence was broken, and the front door hung loosely on its hinges. A feeling of dread filled the air, as if the house itself was alive and watching her. Inside, the floorboards creaked under her feet, and cobwebs hung thick in every corner. The walls were covered with strange symbols drawn in a dark, sticky substance. Each room she entered felt colder than the last, her breath visible in the icy air. Suddenly, she heard faint whispers. "Why are you here?" The voice seemed to echo from all directions. A rocking chair in the living room began to move on its own, slowly rocking back and forth. She froze, noticing a shadow flicker past the doorway. In the kitchen, knives floated silently through the air, spinning and clanging against each other. A photograph on the wall showed a family, smiling, but their faces twisted into grotesque, inhuman shapes when she looked closer. Then from upstairs, she heard the soft creak of footsteps. One by one, doors slammed shut, trapping her in darkness. A pale hand reached from the shadows, grabbing her ankle. She screamed as the house seemed to close in around her, its walls whispering, "You belong to us now." After fleeing the haunted house, Sarah ran into the thick jungle, hoping to find safety. But the forest was alive with strange noises, twigs snapping, leaves rustling, and low growls echoing through the darkness. Every direction looked the same, a maze of twisted trees and creeping shadows. The moonlight barely penetrated the thick canopy. Suddenly, she felt something brush against her arm. She turned, but there was nothing there, only the sound of her own frantic breathing. Then faint footprints appeared in the mud ahead, but they were too large and deep to be human. A scream pierced the night from somewhere deeper in the jungle. It sounded like someone, or something, was being torn apart. Panic surged through her as glowing eyes appeared among the trees, watching her every move. She was running from a force that never let anyone escape. Sarah stumbled through the overgrown path, trying to escape the horrors of the abandoned hospital. Ahead, she saw the faint outlines of a deserted amusement park, its once bright rides now rusted and broken. A flickering sign read, "Fun never ends," but the letters swayed as if breathing. The air was thick with the smell of decay and burnt popcorn. Her footsteps echoed unnaturally on the cracked pavement, yet she could hear faint laughter in the distance, childlike but distorted, twisted into something inhuman. The carousel ahead spun slowly, though no one was around. Its painted horses had faces that seemed to scream silently. A sudden wind carried whispers. "Play with us, stay with us forever." Panic surged as Sarah realized the shadows between the rides moved against the wind. Figures darted behind roller coasters and Ferris wheel supports, always just out of reach. She approached the haunted house attraction, hoping for a shortcut, but it was alive. The walls groaned, and the lights flickered to reveal mannequins in grotesque poses, their eyes following her every move. As she passed, one reached out and grabbed her sleeve. She yanked it free, stumbling into the funhouse mirrors. Inside, the mirrors distorted reality. Her reflection twisted into countless versions of herself, screaming, crying, and clawing at the glass. A cold breath brushed her neck, and a tiny, warped hand reached from between the mirrors. She ran, smashing through a mirror and cutting her arm, blood trailing behind her. Outside, the Ferris wheel creaked to life, moving slowly despite years of rust. Shadows moved on the seats, figures that shouldn't exist, laughing as the wheel turned. The roller coaster groaned, its tracks creaking as if the trains were carrying invisible passengers screaming in agony. From the center of the park, the distorted laughter grew louder, forming words she could barely comprehend. "You can't leave, the fun is eternal." Every exit she tried led her back to the same central plaza, where the carousel and Ferris wheel spun endlessly. Desperate, Sarah climbed onto the broken ride, hoping to escape, but the ground seemed to melt beneath her feet. The park itself became alive, walls and rides bending, twisting, trapping her in an endless loop of laughter and screams. She realized the amusement park was not abandoned. It was hungry, feeding on fear, and she had become its newest player. As the night deepened, the lights dimmed, leaving only the shadows, laughter, and the cold sensation that the rides themselves were watching her. Waiting for her next move, Sarah ran through the dark forest beyond the abandoned amusement park, her limbs trembling from exhaustion. Through the trees, she saw an eerie glow ahead. Pushing forward, she realized it was an ancient cemetery, swallowed by a thick, rolling fog that seemed alive, moving like waves across the gravestones. The air was cold and damp, carrying the scent of earth and decay. She stepped carefully among the crooked tombstones, their inscriptions worn and nearly illegible. Every so often, she thought she heard the faint scraping of a shovel or the muffled whisper of a voice. Suddenly, shadows moved between the gravestones. Figures cloaked in mist emerged, their faces hidden, but their eyes glowed faintly red. A chilling wind carried faint laughter and the sound of chains dragging across the ground. Sarah's flashlight flickered as she approached a mausoleum. The door creaked open slowly on its own. Inside, the air was thick, smelling of rot and old incense. Skeletons, partially buried in dust, began to shift. Their bones rattled like dry leaves as they moved toward her, guided by unseen hands. Outside, the fog thickened, and the cemetery seemed to stretch endlessly. Every gravestone she passed appeared younger than the last, dates moving backward unnaturally, as if time itself had been twisted. Whispers filled the air. "You shouldn't be here, this is ours." A sudden shriek pierced the silence. A crypt lid slowly slid open, and a pale, emaciated hand reached out. Figures emerged from the fog, silent but menacing, surrounding her. Each step she took seemed to pull her deeper into the cemetery's grasp, and the paths she tried to follow looped back to the same ancient gate. The statues of angels scattered among the graves suddenly moved, their stone faces twisting into snarls and their wings stretching to block her escape. The ground beneath her began to shift, graves opening slowly, revealing hands clawing through the soil, grasping at her ankles. In a desperate bid to escape, she ran toward the gate, but the fog thickened, swallowing the path. Shadows reached for her from every side, whispering her name, promising eternal rest. Every grave she passed seemed to pulse as if something underneath was alive, waiting. Breathless and terrified, Sarah realized that the cemetery was not just a resting place for the dead. It was a trap for the living. The fog wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud, and the whispers became a chorus. "You are one of us now." With no exit in sight, Sarah ran blindly, knowing that every step she took only led her deeper into the cemetery's eternal nightmare. Sarah staggered through the foggy cemetery and finally reached the edge of a dense forest. Through the trees, she saw the glint of moonlight reflecting off a river, but something about it was wrong. The water was impossibly dark, almost black, and it moved silently as if swallowing every sound around it. As she approached the riverbank, she noticed boats tied loosely to rotting wooden docks. Their paint was peeled, and the wood groaned under the weight of time. The air smelled of stagnant water and decay. A low, gurgling sound came from beneath the surface, like something enormous stirring. Compelled by fear and exhaustion, Sarah stepped into one of the boats. The moment she touched it, the rope snapped, and the boat floated silently into the middle of the river. The current didn't push her. It felt alive, guiding her deeper into the dark water. Shadows moved beneath the river just under the surface, shifting and writhing like a living mass. Occasionally, pale hands reached out, clawing at the edges of the boat, disappearing as quickly as they appeared. Sarah's heart pounded as she realized the river itself was hunting her. Fog rolled over the water, thick and suffocating. Ghostly figures appeared along the banks, their mouths opening to scream silently. Their eyes glowed, reflecting in the dark water like dying embers. A chill ran down her spine as she realized she wasn't alone. Something massive stirred beneath, following the boat. The boat suddenly jerked violently, as if caught by unseen hands. Sarah fell to her knees, holding onto the sides as water sloshed over the edges. She saw faces forming in the black water, pale and distorted, their mouths frozen in silent screams. "Join us," they whispered in unison. Lightning briefly illuminated the riverbanks. Trees twisted into impossible shapes, their branches clawing at the fog. In the distance, she saw the faint glow of a derelict bridge. She paddled desperately, but the current seemed to fight her, turning the river into a living labyrinth. Suddenly, a massive shadow rose from beneath the water, taller than any human, its eyes burning red. It surged toward the boat, and the water churned like boiling black liquid. Sarah screamed, throwing everything she could into the river to distract it, but it was relentless. The boat lurched forward on its own, escaping the shadow temporarily, but she knew the river would never let her go. The whispers followed her, carried by the water and wind. "No one leaves the dark river alive." Sarah gripped the sides of the boat, tears streaming down her face, realizing the river was not just water. It was a prison, alive, hungry, and eternal. The night swallowed her screams, as the river carried her deeper into its black, watery nightmare.